they made me moderator today. So my condolences to everyone. But inshallah, with all your help and a lot of help, inshallah, we can try to read and see what we can learn today. However, before we start, I'd like to just maybe do a recap, because I was like, what are we studying? I wanted to have fresh in my mind. Why are we studying? I know last week we talked about trees and plants, and I'll briefly ask like what we remember from that, but in the general overview, like why are we studying all of these? And this is the seventh ray, and specifically we're studying the section called the supreme sign. So the largest sign, the biggest sign, what is the sign? And there's a verse that Nursi starts off with, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The seven heavens and the earth and all that is in them extol and glorify him, and there is nothing but glorifies him with praise. And there is nothing but glorifies him with praise, but you understand not their glorifying. Indeed, he is most forbearing, most forgiving. So what this verse is saying, that the seven heavens and the earth, basically everything that we see, you could say the seven heavens, earth, different layers of meaning, different layers of existence, everything is extolling and glorifying him. There is no exception to this. And it says that there's nothing but glorifies him with praise. Whatever you see is glorifying him with praise. Like there is nothing that exists except that it's glorifying with praise. It seemed like such a strong statement to make, such a strong I mean, it's the Quran saying this, such a strong claim from the Quran, because I'm sure there's many areas in our life that we can look at and be like, you know, there, I don't think that's glorifying God, or I don't think God is in here. I don't see how God is relevant in my day-to-day life in this action. But here the verse is very clearly saying nothing exists except that it glorifies him, or that it's praising him. And it's saying but you understand not their glorifying. So again, this is the Quran speech, our creator's speech. It's saying, but you don't understand their glorifying. I remember we had discussed this back when we started this, but this isn't to mean we are incapable or we are unable or we will never be able to understand it. Like this isn't a teacher telling us you're good for nothing, you'll never be able to do anything. No, it's quite the opposite. It's an encouragement to say, you are not currently understanding it, but it's not something that's impossible for you to understand. It's not something you're incapable of understanding. Rather, if you go and study and seek, as Nursi is doing right now with the seven, like the degrees we're going through, there's a traveler that's going from degree to degree, or from looking at existence to existence, and trying to see what the praise is, what's the glorifying there. And just like briefly, kind of the steps that this traveler that Nursi is following, like Nursi is talking in the perspective of the traveler. It started from like the heavens, which he was talking like the stars, the planets, and he like how these are existing, they're not colliding into each other, there's a harmony there, there's some amazing order there. In the beginning, he talks about obedience. Like when you look at these things, you see obedience. It seems that they're following commands. And I think next it goes into the atmosphere and the clouds. You see that there's rain. You see that these clouds and this atmosphere, the wind, they're following also a command. There's some obedience there. Like it seems like they're being told to do something, and they are following it. They're doing it. And then next, I believe it was the sea and the rivers. So again, there Nursi goes into how those can be glorifying and praising. So kind of starting at the very high level of the heavens and slowly coming down. And then I think the next one was the earth, the globe. So now coming to like basically where we are. And then the next one, maybe I skipped one, but the next one that we studied last week was the trees and the plants. And this week, it'll be animals and the birds. So step by step, we're going down. And the next one, if we get to it today, will be about, now we're looking at humans. So slowly we keep changing our perspective and looking at how are these things glorifying? Are they glorifying? So I think that was, there's a claim by the Quran in the beginning, how everything is glorifying with no exception. And for someone like me, it's like, even last week, I remember talking about the trees and the plants, and I was like, is that even true? Like you get so desensitized to it, you start just looking at them as if they're normal. But based on how we studied last week, then we can start seeing different names there. We can start seeing maybe how they are praising. So I just thought it was good to recap there. So before we go into this week, I think let's start with just what we remember from last week, because I think there were some really nice key ideas from last week, points, at least like maybe one or two that stayed with me. So if anyone would like to share what they remember from last week, kind of, and then we can continue on to this week's topic. And I don't mind waiting just silently for a while. I have no problem with that.
I think what we discussed in the last week was mountains and plants, both of these two things. And I think we started off by first describing what glorifying means, how those things are glorifying. And from what I understand and what I remember is that when something is doing its job to perfection, that means it is glorifying its creator. And that is how it was defined. And then we went into the depths of like how mountains are pegs, such as like used in the ship's anchor. So that is how like it's keeping the earth in place. And then the water is springing out and all of those things, how it is glorifying its creator. And then we went on to the plants. Brother Birkan gave an example that stayed with me is like uh, when something comes out of a seed, like 15 or 16 branches sprouting out of a seed, it is fascinating to see at first, but we also need to see the names that are manifested in there. And one that would be is like of generosity. So all of these things, like when we see all of these things in the world and like when it's glorifying its creator, we also need to see what the names of the creator are being manifested. So those are the things that stayed with me.
Yeah.
So like one other point that I remember being talked about a bit last week was just about how if we are able to see, witness, read the glorifications of the world, right, of creation, like if I can look at what is around me or like hear the chirpings in the birds and be able to see that there's divine qualities manifest there, that they are proclaiming something about their creator to me, then that is also how I will then approach things that happen to me or that I face in my life as well, right? Then I'll see that, oh, I'm experiencing something. How can this be a glorification of my creator? Or I have this feeling of, let's say, a sense of injustice or something like that, right? Or sense of justice. How does that feeling in itself glorify the one who gave it, right? So the more I'm able to read the seas, the skies, the planets, all these different phases, like it has a direct impact into how I will interpret, how I will understand, be at peace with, right? Find joy in like whatever I might undergo in my day-to-day life. I think that connection was underlined a bit last week.
To that point, I think an example that Zareen gave was either last week or the week before that was of how we see like rivers flowing through mountains, and that also makes us think of our own bodies and how there are rivers flowing within us. So yeah, just to add to that idea of, if you see what you like natural phenomena as being sustained by God, then you will also see functions within your body as being sustained by and created by God.
Okay, I think those are all beautiful points. Thank you for sharing. One thing in a similar vein that I remember, that was clear for me last week, is this idea of Nursi called them the truths. Brother Rick, I remember, was saying these laws. There seems to be a law of generosity. Because if I look at outside and I see these trees or plants, and they're being like, there's a lot of sun on them. Sometimes there's rain on them, but like for example, I can't stay outside when it's too hot. I want to get inside, but then I look at these things; they're always out there. and they're always in that heat, and somehow they're still green and they're living and they look like they're thriving. So I look at them and I start seeing, yeah, there is this generosity that's very obvious there. And I should, whenever I look at them, I should see that generosity. So that now they start praising or speaking or glorifying this name of the generous one. Like there's a generous one who's giving generosity to these trees, to these plants. And at the very least, when I look at them, I should be able to see that praise, that extolment that they're doing, that glorification that these trees and plants are doing. And then there was one more thing there where the second and the third, he was talking about, I think it's going to be relevant to also today's topic. He was talking about distinction. There's like differentiation. You know, there's one seed, it looks the same, all the seeds look the same, but then it comes out and they're all so different. They're all so unique. They come out in so many different ways. So it shows like there's like intention in how they're made. It's not just all the same, flat. In fact, all of them are extremely beautiful in their own ways, very unique.
Jazakallah. Like 2 points. One thing, since it's now fresh, we're talking about these laws. Just one example. Yesterday I was looking at some colorful fishes with Bushra, and she's looking at the aquarium, looking at all these fishes, and she says, "Oh, these are all different colors." And then she says, "Oh, but these two are twins. They are same, and because they were same color, same stripes, and so on and so forth. They look almost identical." But then I told her, "Look careful. There must be some difference between the two, because everything in the creation are differentiated, like as the second law author mentioned yesterday." And when I told her this, I'm sure about that. There must be something distinct to one of the fish versus the other, right? Why? Because I know that there's this law of differentiating, the beautifying, making it different than others, and so on and so forth, right? And I'm certain, even more certain than, let's say, law of any physical law, like gravity. Because with law of gravity, I know that this thing that we call as law may change, because it's depend on our understanding of the nature, right? It's our interpretation, the names that we made up. These are the laws, and I trust them to some extent because they seem to be working. But when it comes to law of generosity, law of differentiating, law of beautifying, I'm more certain about them because I know that they are taught to me by the maker of this nature, quote unquote, right? The natural laws that we name, these are names that we made up, our interpretation, limited by our understanding, and so on and so forth. But when we talk about the law of generosity, right, it is taught to us by the maker of this nature. And all these years, right, from beginning to the humanity, to this very day, the time, whatever, we tested it and it never failed. Unlike other laws that we know, being, keep failing, and now we correcting, and so on and so forth. So then my, when I read something like that, the news is talking about these laws, I don't take them lightly. Right? I take them, okay, this is the way I will study the universe. This is the way I will understand the universe. And the first point the reason I raised my hand was because you mentioned at the very beginning why we are talking, like studying this text and so on and so forth. We can study this text as in Quran it says everything glorifies. Let's see whether it is true or not. We can study it this way. But the author also defines another purpose at the very beginning when he says this text is about a traveler who tries to learn about his maker, his creator. I don't remember the exact word, what it says. Maker? Rab? Hard. Okay. his creator, right? So that's the main purpose, it seems to me. Like I'm trying to understand who made me, who created me, what is the source of my existence? This is the question I have. And Quran suggests, oh, do you want to know that? Go there and you will see the answer. Look at the universe and everything will tell you about the maker, their maker and your maker, glorifying. If you want to learn, just go and ask them and you will learn. So that's the main purpose as I see.
Okay, Jazakallah khairan. Anyone final chance? Okay. Then inshallah we can read today's topic. So on mine, I think it's page 140, but it's the 7th degree. If everyone has found it, can I have a volunteer who would like to read? Yeah.
As this traveler through the cosmos. As this traveler through the cosmos proceeded on his meditative journey with increased eagerness and a bouquet of gnosis and faith, itself like a spring, gathered from the garden of the spring, there opened before his truth-perceiving intellect, his cognitive reason, the gate to the animal and bird realm. With hundreds of thousands of different voices and various tongues, he was invited to enter. Entering, he saw that all the animals and birds, in their different species, groups and nations, were proclaiming, silently and aloud, "There is no God but He," and had thus turned the face of the earth into a vast place of invocation, an expansive assembly for the proclamation of God's glory. He saw each of them to be like an ode dedicated to God, a word proclaiming His glory, a letter indicating His mercy, each of them describing the Maker and offering Him thanks and encomium. It was as if the senses, powers, members, and instruments of those animals and birds were orderly and balanced words, or perfect and disciplined expressions. He observed three great and comprehensive truths indicating, in decisive form, their offering of thanks to the Creator and Provider and their testimony to His unity. The first, their being brought into existence with wisdom and purpose, and their creation full of art in a fashion that in no way can be attributed to chance, to blind force or inanimate nature. Their being created and composed in purposive and knowledgeable manner. Their animation and being given life in a way that displays in 20 aspects the manifestation of knowledge, wisdom, and will. All of this is a truth that bears witness to the necessary existence of the eternally living and self-subsistent. His 7 attributes and unity, a witness repeated to the number of all animate beings. The second, there appears from the distinction made among those infinite beings and from their adornment and decoration in a fashion by which their features are different, their shapes adorned, their proportions measured and symmetrical, and their forms well ordered, there appears from this a truth so vast and powerful that none other than the one powerful over all things, the one knowledgeable of all things, could lay claim to it. This comprehensive act which displays in every respect thousands of wonders and instances of wisdom. It is impossible and precluded that anything other than such a one could lay claim to it. The third, the emergence and unfolding of those countless creatures in their hundreds of thousands of different shapes and forms, each of which is a miracle of wisdom. Their emergence from eggs and drops of water called sperm that are identical with each other or closely resemble each other and are limited and finite in number, all this in the most orderly, symmetrical, and unfailing fashion, is so brilliant a truth as to be illumined with proofs and evidences as numerous as the animals themselves. By the consensus of these 3 truths, all the species of animals are engaged together in testifying that there is no God but He. It is as if the whole earth, like a great man, were saying, "There is no God but He," in a manner befitting its vastness and conveying its testimony to the dwellers of the heaven. The traveler saw this and understood it perfectly.
In expression of these truths, we said in the seventh degree of the first station, there is no God but God, to whose necessary existence in unity points the consensus of all animals and birds, that praise God and bear witness to him with the words of their senses, their faculties and powers, words well balanced, ordered, and eloquent, with the words of their limbs and members, words perfect and persuasive, by the testimony of the sublimity of the comprehensiveness of the truth of bringing into being, making, and creating, according to will, the truth of distinction and decoration according to purpose, and the truth of proportioning and forming according to wisdom. Definite, too, is the indication given by the truth of the opening of all of their orderly, distinct, variegated, and infinite forms out of identical or similar eggs and drops of sperm that are finite and limited. That meditative voyager, in order to advance farther in the infinite degrees and countless new. Okay.
Hiram, so going back to the beginning, now the traveler has moved on to the next phase, and this is the animal and bird realm. I don't know why he separates birds from animals, but basically animals, all creatures. Let's just say anything that's not a human. I think that's the understanding I'm getting. So we went from all these things that were, let's say, more external, much bigger, like planets, wind, atmosphere, rain, mountains, and then trees and plants, which again are not as, we don't think they have as much, let's say, will or consciousness. Like we don't see them maybe as much that way. But now animals, where it's very clear, and birds, now it's very clear they have more consciousness.
It might be because in Quran also, like the birds are mentioned specifically, but the animals, like I'm just trying to remember, please correct me if I'm wrong, but animals are usually animals. Like we don't see, like there are mentioning of the camels and like some examples, but with the and becomes the food for animals and so on and so forth, such ayahs. The animals are just animals mentioned all together, but usually birds are mentioned separately. It's just maybe.
You want to?
Oh yeah, this one. I think what it means in the Quran, it always mentions dabba and tayr, and dabba is like an animal that walks on, on the ground, and like which is separate than tayr. But I don't think there's, so in English it would just, both of them are animals. In the Quran it's always dabba and tayr, like two distinct, let's say, animals. Like in most of the ayahs they come together.
Okay. Yeah. It is interesting. I guess that falls to kind of, let me first read how Nursi is describing, and I want to ask everyone, is this how you view birds and animals? Like, do birds have a special place, maybe? But so he says that this traveler, he sees these birds and animals, and then he saw each of them to be like an ode dedicated to God, like a poem written dedicated to God, a word proclaiming his glory. So it's glorifying God, this bird or animal. It's a word proclaiming his glory, a letter indicating his mercy. So it's indicating his mercy. Each of them describing the maker and offering him thanks and encomium, which means praise. So, when you read this, it sounds so beautiful. It sounds like Nursi is writing like a very beautiful poem, and it's nice to hear. It's nice to listen to. I think just let's start from personally. Which animals do you see? Which animals are you aware of? And do you hear when you see an animal, let's say a cat, a dog? Or in Philly, you do actually hear birds quite often. Even walking here, we can hear birds. But do you feel like it's an ode dedicated to God, a word proclaiming his glory, a letter indicating his mercy? Like, do you have these feelings? Do you have these emotions in you? Can you pass them?
Okay, I definitely do, especially with birds. I think the term is called flocking, like how they like when a group of birds go in a specific direction, like if you observe it, it's not always one bird that's leading it. Like they sort of take turns. Like there's an order in even how they move, just like from like one place to another, even if it's not like they're specifically migrating, but just like flying around. It's just like so beautiful to see. So yeah, I think I definitely have that awe when it comes to seeing how like birds specifically and just like everything they do is just interesting. It's like there's an order to it, which means there's a praise to it as well. Because when you connect order with praising and glorifying Allah, like they go hand in hand.
I think it's funny that you say that because I was thinking of the exact same thing, like those flocking birds, like that like triangle they make, and that made me think of all these different like groups and orders, like schools of fish or a pack of wolves, and just how these animals organize themselves again in so many different and unique ways from finite sources, like it's all the same egg or again the same embryo or something, and it's so many different things, so many different species of animals, and within species of animals, and there's like the different, I guess, like kinds. Don't know a better word, but there is so much order, and it's not like, oh, I made an animal and it's all the same animal or 5 animals. It's so many and so many orders, and it's like you're in awe of that. Yeah.
So, today at Drexel, we were studying story of Sulaiman alayhi salam. Dua was asking for studying it. Apparently, there was a queen in the story. This is why she was interested in it. But alhamdulillah, it turns out that the topic was related to today's discussion. Because in there, right at the very beginning, well, this is in Surah An-Naml, but as the story of Sulaiman alayhi salam starts, just the second verse goes with وورث سليمان داود وقال يا أيها الناس علمنا منطق الطير وأوتينا من كل شيء إن هذا لهو الفضل المبين. So and Sulaiman was Dawood's heir, and he said, "O mankind, lo, we have been taught the language of birds and have been given of all things. This surely is an evident favor." So, and we were asking the question, what does it mean that to get to know the tongue of birds? And author in here is mentioning that they're different voices. Each one of them is a different word, a different message, a different ode. So author in here is, apparently he learned tongue of, or the language of birds to a certain extent from the message and the messengers, as Sulaiman alayhi salam was taught, and Sulaiman alayhi salam carried this over to us. As we go with this surah, actually, Quran is teaching us how Poo, like the hudhud, has talked. So why is the story being told to us? Our Creator is inviting us to start hearing their glorification. So actually, in this text today, we are learning how to talk, or at least how to understand, if not talk, bird language. So since you were initially rightfully pointing to why is he talking about animals and tuyur, like in the original, he uses the word tuyur, although that's not a common word in Turkish to use as tuyur. Like there's a separate word for bird. So whenever I see such words in Nursi's writing, I say, well, he's referring to something in Quran. And the exact verse that I just mentioned, luqat at-tayr, so the tongue of birds is being mentioned.
Yeah. And again, Nursi here is talking about truths. And I think as we go through the truths, we can discuss further about, again, the differentiation, the order, the seeing the different emerging from one, and how we can read these birds. So the first truth, I'll just quickly reread it. They're being brought into existence with wisdom and purpose, and their creation full of art in a fashion that in no way can be attributed to chance, to blind force, or inanimate nature. They're being created and composed in purposive and knowledgeable manner. their animation and being given life in a way that displays in 20 aspects the manifestation of knowledge, wisdom, and will. All of this is a truth that bears witness to the necessary existence of the eternally living and self-subsistent, his 7 attributes, and unity, a witness repeated to the number of all animate beings. First, what caught my attention here is they're being brought into existence with wisdom and purpose, and in a fashion that can't be attributed to chance, blind force, or inanimate nature. I also looked like where he's using this chance. In the previous one with trees and plants, again, he says it can't happen by chance. In all the other ones, he never once mentioned chance. Because I was wondering why he just brought up chance. It seemed kind of sudden. And I was thinking, just like my question, what does it even mean that something can't be attributed to chance or blind force or inanimate nature? Like when he says this, did I feel convinced when you just throw this out there? Because, I mean, what is chance? Like, I mean, some of us here work in biology, let's say, or different things. Like the first thing that comes to mind is mutations, let's say. Things mutate. A cell mutates. Something randomly, you know, quote unquote, happens. And do we think that, yeah, you can't randomly get birds? Do we think that, I mean, what is this even, this concept of a random? I think I'd like to briefly pause here and think about that. And if anyone would like to comment about, let's say, mutations and randomness and how that works, if anyone knows. Looking at biology. Okay. So not put on the spot, but the way I understand it, I think that the way Nursi, because like what is, I think from our discussions, if we threw everything away and just started from today, it wouldn't work. Because like up to this point, we've studied about causality, we studied about how nothing can exist by itself, we studied about all those names of knowledge, wisdom, and powers. We can't just throw all of that away. So I think when Nursi says it obviously can't happen by chance or blind force, inanimate nature, we can't just throw all of that away. One, like, because we see all of these attributes that exist there. And if you're just saying it's just random or blind chance, like, what about that wisdom and knowledge I see there? And then, like, because I was talking to another friend about these mutation things, I was thinking, you know, yeah, sure, a cell might mutate or this might mutate, or it looks like there's some selection or something is happening, but even that's happening within a system. Like, you can't just throw away that system. And what's to even say that that mutation is random, like just happening by itself? Obviously, it exists. Obviously, like, it's happening within an order. There's some harmony there. There's a reasoning there. There's rules there. So I think there is no chance there. I can't say there's even chance there. I can't say it's just randomness. Yeah, but still, I thought it was interesting that Nursi said it can't be attributed to chance. Like, I guess you can't say it just happens by itself. That's my understanding of it. And then,
so just as an example, again, with our hupu from today's discussion, like in a few verses down, again in Surah An-Naml, when hupu starts talking in Quran, so Quran is deciphering the tongue of hupu for us, hudhud for us. So in there, hupu is telling that, bringing a news to Sulaiman alayhi salam, saying that I comprehend something that which you don't. Meaning, I have a message to you. So human, you think like you are smarter, you are more comprehensible than an animal. He says, I have something to you that you do not know, which means then I should pay attention to the creation. Like as a human, yes, human is created as a more comprehensive creature, but this doesn't mean that you actualized all these potentialities. So there are things for you to learn from birds, from ants, from whatever. So, and then Hupu gives the news of this queen, Dua's queen, but then news about the queen, and then interestingly starts describing the queen and her people. Says وجدتها وقومها يسجدون للشمس من دون الله وزين لهم الشيطان. So I found them to be prostrating sun. And in the next verse, very interestingly, ألا يسجد لله الذي يخرج الخبأ في السماوات والأرض ويعلم ما تخفون وما تعلنون. So Satan deviated them from doing what? From prostrating to Allah. But the description of Allah by Hudhud is interesting here. Says, who brings to light all that is hidden in the heavens and the earth, and knows all that you conceal and all that you reveal. So, like, this bird is getting to know Creator as the one who reveals that which is hidden. That's an interesting description. It looks like this bird is specifically, like, for instance, the example we used in today's discussion was, a person with eyes can get to know the Creator as the creator of light. But a blind person cannot say that, right? Because in the world of a blind person, there's no light. So the blind person cannot know the Creator as or through light. So Hudhud is getting to know his Creator as the one who reveals the hidden things. So what I heard about this bird Hudhud is, this bird is historically used for detecting where the water is. Like, that bird is sensing underwater, underground waters. So it's like the Creator gave the qualities to this bird to detect where the water is flowing from. And in the verse, now the bird is, since the Creator taught the bird with this quality, the bird glorifies the Creator through this aspect, saying that, oh, Creator of, or the revealer of the hidden things. He doesn't take it to himself. The bird doesn't take it to itself, saying that, no, I find the hidden things. It says, no, the revealer of the hidden things exists and manifests on me. So this is the tongue of this bird and how it glorifies its Creator. Now, when we come to the part that you just mentioned, by chance, what would we say in today's world? It just evolved to end up having this specific trait. Like, if we ask the question, how come, let's say, the lions have claw, we'll say, well, natural elimination or by chance and this and that. For lion, it ended up being like this. For the bird, it happened to be a different way by chance. Or for Hudhud, it ended up that by chance, the bird can detect where the underground water is flowing. But the way Quran is teaching us to read what Hudhud says is, no, Hudhud is aware that there's a revealer of the secrets, because water is normally a secret going under the soil.
So basically, the story of Suleiman, or how I'm understanding, is like, it's teaching how you can read animals, or in specifically Hudhud's case, a bird. You can read a bird as a revealer, or it's extolling its creator that revealed things to it. And you can read a bird in that sense. Like, if I look at thing is, animals are kind of hard, because I was thinking, what animals do I really even interact with daily? It's not much. Maybe dogs. I see dogs. Or cats. I see cats in windows when I walk by them looking at me, and I look at the cat and I feel pity for the cat. It's just stuck there looking at me.
You don't interact with mice?
Thankfully not. Actually, I was gonna, there's one more. Yeah. We all interact with something. Flies and mosquitoes for sure. I was thinking of that too. I was like, what does a fly and a mosquito extol to me? Like, what is it praising? You know, when I get bitten by a mosquito, I'm just like, why does this thing even exist? Like, why do you exist? You know, that's something typical with mosquitoes. But even before I get there, let's go to cats. Like if I see a cat and how it walks so nimbly, and then my wife had like shared a video of, like, they put a GoPro on a cat, and it's like walking around, jumping around on fences, and it's just walking on the tiniest little like fences, and it's so, like, there's beauty there, and just how it's moving. That's all it is. It's so beautiful. And there it speaks of one who made it beautiful, or one who gave it those qualities of being so nimble and so agile and so beautiful to that cat. So it's obvious. And birds, like, we were just walking here on the street, and these birds are just singing. Philly birds are amazing because the city is like so you might almost say dull or kind of just depressing in some ways, but you're walking on the street and you just see these tiny little birds just pecking away. They're so happy, jumping around. They're just joy, manifestation of joy, happiness. Like there, you can definitely see that bird speaking, praising. Yeah. And then, but I guess coming to the other side of it, like mosquitoes, flies, these are also things we definitely interact with daily. I'm not sure how I could see the phrasing there. That's something, if anyone has a thought. Does anyone think mosquitoes praise the creator? Anyone else?
A friend of mine, no, it's not me. He was talking specifically about the mosquitoes, a mechanical engineer. So, guys, take it seriously. He's studying the fluid dynamics and so on and so forth. And he was saying, I probably mentioned this before, the aerodynamical properties of the mosquito. He was saying is so incredible. Is the English word for the, is it a maneuver? Maneuver, yeah. The maneuvers they make, and when you try to model them and so on and so forth, it's like mind-blowing. So the way they fly, the way they are, I don't understand why, but they're silly. They don't run away from you. They like when you slap them, you just kill them easily. But in Turkey, man, no way that you can catch them. Like with all the technology, everything, so anyway, they definitely glorify many names. Even the way they bite you, like without you noticing and so on and so forth, the way they take whatever they want and leave what is need to be left there.
Underground currents.
Underground currents, yes. Yeah. So like they say, these, so sometimes like these are all our made up names, of course, but still helps to understand the creation itself. Some of them can sense, the certain, I don't want to say just blood type, what is inside your blood so that, they can get what they need. I don't know how many neurons they have. Maybe 1, 2, 3, I don't know. With that capacity, they can sense all this, just as Yusuf mentioned about the hudhud, sensing what is sealed, what is hidden. Like in the same room, I'm sleeping, my brother's sleeping. They don't bite him at all. They don't like his blood for some reason, but they come and bite me. Right? So how? All these names are manifested for sure. About the chance, the author like very nicely explains the opposite of chance. It's something being like coming to the existence with purpose, knowledge, and will. That's the opposite of the chance, the randomness. We call, for instance, a certain mutation random. Why? Because within the bigger picture of evolution and fittest of the survival of the fittest, we don't see any fitness there. Like a single mutation happens, we say there's no function of it. There's no purpose. There's no ilm, the knowledge. The will is never there anyway. I mean, according to this stupid the explanation of the nature. But so that's the reason we call them random. Author says in everything there is such a, I keep calling it law just to make it, the emphasis, give the emphasis. There's this truth of the purpose, knowledge, and the will in everything. So this is a call for our biologists. When somebody calls something random, a mutation, it's just a mutation, doesn't mean anything by itself. So that's the idea. But for some reason, when it comes together with other things and so on and so forth, in a certain period of time, it makes sense. That's the idea, right? So the author says, no. Even with a single mutation, look careful and you will see wisdom there, just in this single mutation. But that's a call. You should then study it this way. You will say, oh, there's such a law of wisdom. You don't have to say it to your colleagues. They wouldn't understand. But at least yourself, you will say, oh, there's a law of wisdom in the creation. There must be wisdom that I will see there. And then you will get your novel.
Dua, I mean, I don't know who had their hand up first. Dua, and then one of you two.
I want to comment on how the mosquito can extol God. And I was thinking, things don't necessarily have to be a source of joy for us in order, or a means of joy for us in order to extol the creator. We had like quite a few conversations about how, like you're going about your day and you see so much beauty in the world. You're looking at the trees, the leaves, and all of a sudden you will see a dead squirrel. There will be a disturbance in there to remind you that, there is something else that's going on. This world is maybe not the permanent world, and there are disturbances in this world, and I should work towards adding a degree of permanence to my pleasure by, like worshiping God and doing the best that I can be and doing what he has commanded me to. So in that way, those mosquitoes and those flies, they remind us, and they're a means of that disturbance that reminds us that, I want to remove this pain from my life. Is there a way that I can never have pain in my life? And it reminds me of God and all that he has commanded me to do, and, the way that he has paved for me to get to that eternal pleasure. So in that way, they do remind us that they too are employed by Allah in order to give us that disturbance. And in that way, they extol the Lord.
I think with mosquitoes too, like, so I'm thinking if you ever look outside, like just over grass and the sun is shining, you could see sometimes like in the rays of the sun, there's like thousands of just things moving, And maybe you could walk through and you don't get bit by them. I don't think they're mosquitoes. They're like tiny flies of some sort. But one way, I guess, like it's amazing that there's thousands of just flying things and within a small area that are all living, doing their own thing, being created, have their own life or whatever is being given to them. And it's just kind of the vastness of, let's say, the universe versus like the microcosm. It kind of gives you that perspective as well. I guess we can stop to pray at this point. So 10 minutes for prayer, and then inshallah we'll continue till 9. Okay. So I think we can continue with the second truth. So I'll quickly read it as well. And then if we have comments, we can make them. And if not, we can continue. So the second truth, there appears from the distinction made among those infinite beings and from their adornment and decoration in a fashion by which their features are different, their shapes adorned, their proportions measured and symmetrical, and their forms well ordered, there appears from this a truth so vast and powerful that none other than the one powerful over all things, the one knowledgeable of all things, could lay claim to it. This comprehensive act, which displays in every respect thousands of wonders and instances of wisdom, it is impossible and precluded that anything other than such a one could lay claim to it. Essentially, similar to the point about distinction and differentiation in trees and plants, but when you look at these animals, these birds, these fish, so many colors of fish, so many types of fish. If you go to an aquarium, I remember there was one aquarium we went to, there were just so many different types of tiny frogs, like little tiny frogs, so many different colors, seahorses, everything. At some point, you get a headache from just how many different names there are, how many different species there are, and they're all so beautiful. And you're just like, wow, why do these all exist? You can't even appreciate them all. You don't have the energy to appreciate them all. There's so much distinction. and it's saying, made those infinite beings from their adornment and decoration. Like they're so adorned, they're so decorated, they're so different, they're so proportioned. It's not just randomly like some haphazard monster you create by joining different things, but each one within themselves, they look so proportionate, so beautiful. Like, I mean, right now I'm making it up, but if you think of a giraffe with a very long neck, you might think, oh, what a crazy idea to think something has a very long neck. But then you look at a giraffe and it looks so elegant with its very long neck, or a swan. And you're like, oh, but then something with a very short neck, like let's say, I don't know, a rhino or something, it also works for that animal. It fits. You don't think there's anything weird about that. So you see all these different traits within the animal. It seems perfect. It seems to work very well. And then it says that from this, the truth, there's a truth here that's so vast and powerful. It's like self-evident that there needs to be one powerful over all these things, one knowledgeable over all of them, and only one that has all the knowledge and all the power can lay claim to ownership over these things. And then, I guess we could think about how much we agree with that statement. But again, if you go to an aquarium, if you go to these places, you see all of these different things. You're like, yes, whoever made this, and they're similar to each other. They're not just completely different from each other either. There's order, like they're within maybe the same, I don't know, kingdom and genus or whatever they would say. So it seems that they all are related to each other, like all humans are related to each other, but they're all unique in their own ways. And whoever made one of them made them all and had to know all of them. So, I mean, for me, this seems to make sense. Does anyone disagree? Does anyone think Nursi is speaking nonsense? Does anyone want to? Does anyone want to be courageous and say no?
So I was just thinking of that like all these things that Imam Nursi is saying, if you tell that to, let's say, a biologist who says it is chance, he might say that again, you're seeing that there's an order because like, oh, if we go back in the species, they come from the same parent. So that's going to be their explanation of it. And as we talk about how there's an order and how everything is proportionate, like it's the same thing as Dr. like you've mentioned this example before, that we see birth and we say it's natural, but if we see like a camel coming out of a rock, we call it a miracle. But if we see it enough times, we'll start calling it natural too. So just with this thing, like I know he's saying all these things, and to some extent, of course, they make sense and how they're working. But again, you tell these things to someone who is a scientist, and he will not see any of these things, and he'll probably think that, you know what, you're the one who's making these things up, and you're trying to see something that's not there. So that's where it's a little like out there in that sense, that he's seeing all this knowledge, he's seeing that, oh, there has to be a creator. But again, in the current education that we're all in, like they have their own explanations for why it is like that. So I don't think this clearly clarifies that, oh, it's not by chance.
Thank you for your courage. Do we have another courageous person to respond? Perhaps a scientist.
Yeah. Could someone at the end of the first, I don't know if it's aspect or truth, but it talks about his 7 attributes in unity. Could someone like talk about what the 7 attributes are?
You want to talk about the 7 attributes in unity? So the way, I mean, I'm sure he is based on some tradition or something, he's making that specific term about 7 attributes, but let's say there are 7 more prominent attributes or more prominent names. Like something we always say is like knowledge, wisdom, power, these are all names that we're witnessing. So the way I understand it's 7 more prominent names are being I guess shown there more obviously. I think so. And coming to this question about the second about like what a scientist would say or something, I couldn't convince a scientist, let's say, or I couldn't make an argument good enough for them. But for me, it's always important. What would I say? Does it work for me? Like, does this make sense for me? And when maybe if you go to a scientist and say, come on, look at the knowledge, the wisdom, the power, the will, and how these can't just happen by chance. Like you see there's intention there, you see that they're being created. And it's not just like I mean, there's also like mercy there and generosity there. Like you can feel these things. Maybe they'll say you're just making it up, and then they'll kill it all. And it's done. You can't go further. But for me, I am reading it. I'm not making it up. I see it. I read it. It makes sense to me. It fits with my emotions. It seems to fit with the way I read the world. It seems to fit with my understanding of creation. And then I get these messengers and I look at everything, and it seems to all have like fit. There's order there. So I choose not to kill it. I would prefer it like this traveler to actually try to, as Brother Rikan said, we want to go and find these glorifications, because the more I can see that things are glorifying, the more I'm happy, the more the problems in my life are being solved, the more I can live with happiness. So I choose not to kill these things that I'm reading. So I couldn't say anything about convincing scientists.
I think that's just my opinion. I feel a true scientist would not deny that there's order, that there is this very like intricate complexity. There's something like there's so much, like, how to say, so many things going on at the same time, but at the same time they're so homogeneous. There's so much harmony in like very tiny thing that we can't see in like our own eyes. So, and the proof to that is that we are spending so much time and so much money on studying these things. If there was no, if it was all random, I feel, and if people didn't feel or think that there's something like so, how to say, something like so amazing, so extraordinary happening, we won't spend this much money on it. We won't spend time on it. People won't spend years of their life studying this tiny minute thing. It's just because we know that there's no ways. It's like, it's really worth studying. Now, if you come to the lab and ask scientists, like, don't you see how amazing this thing is? Don't you see how, like, it can't be by chance, it can be random, like we see it happens every single day, like there's so much specificity, like in a cell or whatever. He would say, if there is God, there won't be this war or children dying or whatever. So they won't deny that there's order. There's something magnificent going on, but they would deny that there's God. Like it's very different. They just don't want to accept the idea that there's a will, or there's order, or there's wisdom, because then they have to accept other things. But exactly, so the denial there is not the denial of the order and wisdom and magnificence in what they see, and something that is worth studying, worth spending money and time on it. It's just always the same answer. If there's God, why is there so much suffering in the world? If there's God, why there's this going on? Like these kind of things. I don't think there's a denial of the other part, that what we're studying. It's just for us, or for me, is that it can, if we're saying it's not by chance, it's not by random, it is being controlled by something, something that knows everything about everything going on, something that knows this molecule and this molecule, that they have to be at the same time and the same place, not only two, like millions of things going on at the same time. So it can't be, we talked about this also before, about like when we talked, I think, about unity. Can't be like, if you believe like this has its own, doing its own thing, like this millions of gods, like small gods, at the end you will reach to one thing, that there's only one main source of this knowledge that is controlling everything. Yeah, that's
Yeah. I think there's two things I want to say. I hope I don't get them. I hope I don't forget them. But I think that first, even if we don't go to straight up biologists and scientists, the way we study in school, like most people that go through secular school, we are kind of scientists. Like the scientific method is everywhere, not just in science. And we tend to look for some sort of proof, some sort of logical proof. So I think that in a sense, there could be a part of people that are scientists and will want to find order. And in that same vein, I think that there are scientists that even if they like, I'm trying to frame it, but like to piggyback off what you said, maybe these scientists that are studying something on a plant, let's say, and maybe they want to see the order, like have the order that God created, having it on paper, like fully understanding it. And I don't know if that goes against like understanding God through it, or understanding its glorification of God, if scientists just want to have that on paper. Like, I want to understand, like we're all trying to understand it. Like, I think that could also be an approach or a viewpoint of a scientist.
And also, just to directly answer Dua's question, like Abdurrahman's right, he is referring to like within traditional like theological discourse, right? They would have determined that logically God would have to have like 7 attributes or sifat of life, power, knowledge, irada, intent, hearing, seeing, and speech. But here, so he's referring to that, but here he's also saying that like I feel the difference here is that he's not saying that these are just logical conclusions that one comes through intellectual exercise, right? But that you can bear witness to this amongst all his other qualities as well.
So I will say something disturbing.
It's courageous.
Not much. It's oppressive. I think every time we think about a hypothetical person and try to convince him or try to convince her, it's just a call inside us saying that you're not convinced. Try to convince yourself. Because there is no such person I know that, shaped in a scientist way, whatever it means, has certain stereotypical, the beliefs or ideas and so on and so forth. There are some humans, there are some stupid humans, there are some, clever humans and so on. Most of the people in academia, for instance, who would call them as scientists, I really appreciated Sarah, the imitation of the voice with a football player. Oh, I want ice cream type of, the speech, like, how about this word? Because like most of the people in academia, they really lack, the capability of thinking anyway. And I'm not saying that because they are not believing or anything. This is like an empirical fact. Like the most people, they cannot think straight in academia. Believer or unbeliever, I'm not talking about that.
Why they are not in business, but in academia.
So maybe. So I'm just talking from the empirical perspective. Like some of them you wouldn't even hire to take care of your, in Vava, for instance, you wouldn't hire them to work there. So anyway, so there's no reason to, imagine such people 24 hours, 7 days, thinking about the universe, the life, and so on, and coming up with some certain ideas. There's no such thing. Like there are some, like a handful of people doing that, maybe. Some of them, maybe majority of them, let's assume all of them, doesn't matter, doesn't believe. But when you listen, when you read why they don't believe, it's mostly about the ice cream, really. Like, I wanted the ice cream, but God didn't give me the ice cream while these wars are happening. This type of, the reasoning usually. The sugar coated by, some other things. Oh yeah, in quantum physics, there are these things, whatever. Like, it's all about the ice cream in reality. But anyway, so the reason I said this, not to, to make fun of people like myself, but the reason is that when we think about such hypothetical people and try to convince them, to me at least, it's always a call for you inside, saying that, come on, don't fool yourself. You're not convinced. And just like, Quran makes, like how Quran talks about shaitan, the Satan, right? It says like as if a third person. It's not something part of you, but it's another entity. Just save you from the blame, right? It says, oh, it's the Satan's whisper, right? The same way, in the creation, we see this same phenomena, and we say, oh, but there are such people we cannot convince, which means you are not convinced. So let's start from there, maybe. And I think the convincing yourself or somebody else, it shouldn't be in the form of child game. Oh, I see it, you don't see it. I didn't see it. I saw it first. It shouldn't be this way. Like, if there's something there, there's something there. If there's nothing there, there's nothing there. So that's the reason, the author, when the author talks about the chance or randomness, for instance, it's not just use it as a word. He explains. It says there's a will there, there's the knowledge there, there's a purpose there. This is the opposite of the random. If anyone, scientist or not, can show me something in the creation which is free of knowledge, what it means, like, you don't have to think it in the way that, yes, it ends up, boils down to that, but you don't have to think it that way, like in a way that, oh, there must be someone who controls everything, who knows everything, and so on and so on. No, start from just the manifestation of this all-knowing. Just a piece of knowledge. You will see there. With everything in the creation. Show me anything in the creation that is free of knowledge, and I'm ready to say that, okay, everything we studied so far was just nonsense. Even with these random mutations, whatever. Like, there's always a mechanisms there. The RNA will be always there, transcribing in a certain way knowledge. Written. Like, what knowledge means, it means it's written somewhere. You will see some indication of it. You will say, I have a random thought, right? But then I will show you it's not random. There are, there's some neuron spiking which corresponds to your thought. It's a knowledge. It means your thought that you thought was random. There's a written piece of knowledge somewhere in the creation which relates to that, right? If you can show me anything in the creation which is not that way, yes, you are talking about the random. But most of the people, when they say random, they just use it like a child, right? It doesn't mean anything. Random means, oh, I'm not a Muslim, I'm sorry, man, I'm not from the Pakistan. That means random for them. Or for us as well, most of the time. It is not random, I would say. It simply means, oh, I'm from Lebanon, we believe in God. Like, that's what not random means for. I'm just using as an example, sorry, like a just joke, right? So author says, don't do that. If you do that, you cannot convince yourself. And then you will invent some hypothetical people and try to convince in your mind, and it will go nowhere. Convince yourself, accept that you are not convinced. Convince yourself through at least, like, this is a method that works for me. Author says, look at the creation everywhere. You will see knowledge. Everywhere you will see purpose. Everywhere you will see will, determination, and so on and so forth. And it will tell you about the maker, creator. Now I'm convinced that there is nothing in the creation which is random. I'm 100% convinced now. And I can explain this to any quote unquote scientist who wants ice cream. And they would say, oh yeah, you are right. If you this is what you mean, you're right. But I'm still not from Pakistan, so I'm sorry, but I don't believe in God. They will say, that's not the point anyway.
So, I mean, just very briefly, I don't think anybody would deny order, because if there were no order, we wouldn't try to do reproducible science. Like, we are trying to come up with results which another person in another lab can come up with, which means we already assume there exists order so that people from different sides of the world are working on the same topic. Like, even the existence of science itself means there's order. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to codify those laws as we say them. So nobody denies order, but the part that's being denied is order happens by chance. And so this is the part that anybody in their sanity needs to check for. Like, does it really happen? And like, we don't accept this when it comes to very simple, mundane things. But yeah, as very beautifully Sister Sarah put it, when it comes to, let's say, creation of how the universe is existing. So if I say, yes, it's not happening by chance, then it's going to have consequences. So for other reason, I am trying to come up with an alternative explanation. I am forcing myself to come up with an alternative explanation because I am predetermined to say that I have to explain it within itself. It doesn't make sense, yet I have this precondition. So Nursi gives the example of somebody getting into a building, sees that, oh, this is a very nice, beautiful building and whatnot, orderly. But since the beginning, there's this dogma that the person got stuck with, saying that something within this building made this building. This is the initial restriction that the person imposes upon themselves. And based on this, he looks around the house, cannot find anything suitable to attribute the making of the house to. But then he finds some blueprint somewhere. Says, well, this seems to be the most appropriate that I can attribute to. Otherwise, it's clear that, of course, the blueprint cannot make the house. But due to my initial self-induced limitation, I have to say that this is what does. So this is why we really need to, like, I can feel that, I mean, I agree with Brother Birkan, those questions sometimes happens because we are not convinced. But another version of it can also happen that we give too much credit to what this person of authority says. The person of authority is just talking nonsense sometimes due to this initial self-induced restriction on themselves. So I would say, well, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So, and I should be able to say that, well, still, to a certain extent, I take your questioning serious. Just maybe you were right. If you were right, yeah, I would like to consider this as an option. But after a certain point, you realize that there is some sort of either like insincerity or some sort of illogical route is being taken. So I should be able to then spot and say that, well, look, come on, man. I mean, what you're doing is nonsense. And you know that it's nonsense. You can admit, you cannot admit, it's up to you. But to me, it's clear that you are talking nonsense. Because a few days ago, I was thinking about our conversation with a friend. Like, he was a biologist doing a PhD at Penn back in the day. I was asking the question, like, look at the seed. This is going to become a flower with purple color, yellow colored, but the color is not here. Where is it now? He said, well, the flower absorbed. I said, where does the color come from? He said that the flower absorbed the colors from the sun and going to reveal it later on. Like, what sort of a materialist explanation is this? Per your dogma, you shouldn't be able to say such a thing, because right now it doesn't exist, and you're saying that it's hidden, and it's going to get revealed. Like, what does it mean hidden? Per your ideology, there shouldn't be anything hidden. Or you would say that it is now being converted, which means coming into existence out of nothing. So it doesn't make any sense per your assumptions. But a person, very successful person, doing PhD at Penn, a biologist, we're able to say that. So the question is, do you take this serious? once you see the picture, you take it serious to a certain point, and then you realize that, well, I mean, no, okay, yeah, I got you. Then you move on with your way.
Jazakallah khairan for all those comments. So I guess it doesn't make sense to go to the next section. So let's just comment on a third and then we can close after. So third truth. The emergence and unfolding of those countless creatures and their hundreds of thousands of different shapes and forms, each of which is a miracle of wisdom, their emergence from eggs and drops of water called sperm that are identical with each other or closely resemble each other and are limited and finite in number. All this in the most orderly, symmetrical, and unfailing fashion is so brilliant a truth as to be illumined with proofs and evidences as numerous as the animals themselves. By the consensus of these three truths, all the species of animals are engaged together in testifying that there is no God but He. It is as if the whole earth, like a great man, were saying there is no God but He, in a manner befitting its vastness and conveying its testimony to the dwellers of the heaven. And yeah. So the third truth, again, similar to the plants and animals, now he's talking about how they start. For the plants, it was talking about a seed and it differentiates. Here it's talking about there's this emergence, it's using the word emergence or unfolding. And it comes from one egg or one drop of water called sperm, or it's something that in the beginning, it looks very identical to each other. It doesn't look like they're very different, but then it branches out and they all look very different. They become very different. And it happens very orderly. It happens very symmetrical. And it's very clear that there's a lot of knowledge there. Like to be able to make something that in the beginning is the same, but then turns into so many different things. I mean, it's obvious that there's a lot of wisdom there. There's a lot of intention or knowledge there. Like you can't it doesn't just happen. If you wanted to build something that was very different from the start, you'd create 10 different ways of building it. Let's say you wouldn't start from the same thing. I mean, it's just to understand, one, they start from the same thing and they become so many different things. And in the previous one, we were talking about how there's just so many different things and they all point to like a unity. So I think these are just, again, added on another truth that we can see when we look at creation, when we read creation. And the part that I kind of want to focus on, which everything boils down to this, is all the species of animals that are engaged together in testifying that there is no God but He. And he's saying it is as if the whole earth, like a great man, we're saying there is no God but He. Like they all come together, they kind of join, and they say there is no God but He. You know, the purpose of this traveler looking around, it's to find this glorifying of God. It's to find that, to actually see that there is nothing except that it glorifies God. And then if you can read these birds, these animals, in that way, in like the story of Sulaiman, if you could read the bird in that way, and when we're walking on the street and we hear the birds, when we run into mosquitoes or all these different things, and we can read them in that way, then they start glorifying for us. And what does it mean to say glorifying? It's saying, they're saying La ilaha illallah. They're saying there's no God but He. And you know, there's a lot of implications with that. If you can read that saying, seeing these things, saying there's no God but He. When, let's say, for example, a mosquito is an easy example. If I see a mosquito come and start biting me, and now I get extremely frustrated, I get angry, and I'm like, why is this happening to me? I could have this approach where now I get worse and worse and worse and more frustrated. The other one could be like, oh yeah, this is kind of painful, I don't really like this. But at the other hand, like, wow, look at how beautiful this mosquito is flying and how amazingly it can come and suck blood out of me, and how and just how it's created. Like, it's not just existing by itself randomly. Even that mosquito, it's not like an enemy come to attack me. It's still also a creation. It is also still saying La ilaha illallah. So in some sense, it's like my companion in creation, my friend in creation. It's like we're both existing in the same creation. We both are trying to praise the same creator, it changes my mindset about, it can change my mindset about everything, not just mosquitoes. So I feel like there's a lot of implications there. And that's like the main purpose of, studying this.
So, as an anecdote again from today's discussion, in Sulaiman alayhi salam's army, there were jinn, humans, and birds. And Sulaiman alayhi salam is waging a war against someone who worships sun. Like, this is a prophet, and his point is not to expand the land. It's not to conquer more land, more wealth. Because messenger, what's the messenger's duty? By name indicates to take the message to someone. So having a war with those people to take message to them, because the ruling class, as Quran mentions, is the general source that prevents people to take the message. So in the prophetic way, war is waged against someone to take the message to the people, to take away the obstacle from in between. But in Sulaiman alayhi salam's army, there are birds, which is funny. Like, birds are very fragile creatures. Why would you have birds? And he's mentioning not eagles. Like, he's talking about poo, which is like those small bird with a crown. Like, why would you have such a thing in your army? Like, at least if you're going to have something like eagles, as it is in the Lord of the Rings, right? So the thing is, what do we get out of this story? When you declare a war against unbelief, get birds in your army. And in the story, as we were talking about today, so the Sulaiman looks at the army, just looking at the ranks, and then he couldn't see Hupu, and he gets angry. Where's Hupu? If he doesn't come and give me an excuse, I'm going to be super angry with him. So in our case, what does this correspond to? Let's say if, we have people biology here, they're in the lab and they're seeing an attack towards cell, let's say T cells. So then in this case, we need to recruit T cells in our army because this is where the attack is coming from. So we need to push back from there. Or if you're in, IT, and you see that people are saying that, your Quran, you see it's miracle, we will develop a language model and it's going to come up with a better Quran than you think, and we will show that it's man-made or something like this, right? So now that means you need a language model, a large language model in your army to defeat the unbelief. So this very interestingly, then all these things become soldiers of the Creator. Like, everything in the creation becomes the soldiers of the Creator, all of them saying La ilaha illahu. And in your world, if you're going to have this war, and we internally have this war, belief and unbelief is in everybody's world, there's this fight happening in between. So if you would like to strengthen your attack, your army, then you will have to recruit some birds, some ants, so that they are going to be on the ranks that fights with you. You're going to be their commander in this case. So you would like to look at them, who is there, who is not there, who left the ranks. And then you will say, I need to come up, fill this gap. Otherwise, the enemy is going to attack from there. So it's very beautifully really explaining us how we are in this fight of Iman versus Kufr. Because this war is an ancient war, as ancient as humanity, this belief-unbelief war. We are in the middle of it. Sulaiman alayhi salam is exemplifying how to properly be the commander, be the proper king, because there are very improper kings that are mentioned in the Quran as well. So we then need to recruit those soldiers from the existence. And one final anecdote, since we are 1 minute shy of our full time. So in there, when Sulaiman alayhi salam hears ant comes in the valley of ants saying that, ants, get into your dwelling place. Sulaiman and his army is coming, and without noticing, they will crush you. Once Sulaiman hears this, with joy, he laughs and then makes a dua. When you observe mosquito doing something like trying to attack you, you can say mosquito, like you get your lesson out of mosquito, saying that, okay, my creator asked you to drink blood, but also my creator told me to defend myself from you. You're not going to get it from me. So you're not killing the mosquito, you're appreciating the duty of mosquito, saying that you are doing your job, but also I have a job not to let you bite me, lovingly, knowingly. So you're having this cute conversation saying that your maker is my maker. Do you think I'm going to let you go? So having this very beautifully, Quran is exemplifying Sulaiman alayhi salam's loving, mutual conversation with the creation.
Any final remarks, comments, thoughts? Then inshallah we will end here. Thank you everyone for your contributions and your discussions or your thoughts or just being here and enlivening the area with your presence. Alhamdulillah. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.